Hey there, channel members. Welcome to Black Swan and Black-Necked Swan as totems. These swans are so different from the other all-white swan species that they really needed their own video, as the information was just too complex to add to the video about swans in general. So I've chosen to make it into a video just for you, as a huge thanks for your generous support. You're the only ones with access to this information at this time, as it's not going to be available anywhere else online. The most obvious thing that distinguishes black swans and black-necked swans from the other 5 swan species is their color. As opposed to the all-white plumage of the other swan species, the plumage of black swans is primarily black or dark gray, and that of black-necked swans is primarily white, but with a solid black neck. I would definitely recommend watching the Swan as a Totem video if you're interested in black swan or black-necked swan, because some of the items in that video are universal across swan species, and several of the points I'll be talking about in a second are explained in comparison to the other swan species. So let's start with the black swan. First, black swan people and those who resonate with the all-white swans are both idealists in the extreme. They have exceptionally high standards when it comes to how they believe that things should be, and they can ruminate non-stop if things that are important to them continuously fall short. For all white swan folks, their ideals have to do with classical notions of beauty and purity of spirit and behavior. Everything in their environment needs to be the best version of itself that it could possibly be, and that includes the people too. They extend these same exacting standards to themselves, picking on themselves quite often for not being good enough in some fashion, and worrying often about whether or not they're living life right. Black swan people also have insanely high ideals. But here, it centers around a willingness to see those things to which our society or family wants us to turn a blind eye. Black swan people have an interest in the so-called darker topics, in all that's mysterious and hidden and taboo, and most especially in our personal shadows and all that lies within them. They excel at unraveling the mystery of others, and they're intended to be quite good at unraveling their own mysteries, facing all of those things that scare the heck out of them or shame them until these things become sacred sources of growth and reasons for self-love rather than things to be buried. They're here to inspire people to face their own shadow, not through classically beautiful creations or by representing light in the manner of all white swan people, but through getting comfortable with the dark by being daring and edgy and refusing to care about what society thinks of them for doing so. Because this is their purpose, and because they've experienced the benefits of doing this, encountering people who refuse to do this, the hypocritical, or those who simply will not look at how they are deluding themselves or standing in their own way, will infuriate them. Want to annoy an all-white swan person? Show them a lazy person being given all that they want for free. Or a store full of cheaply made goods being marketed as the best there is. Want to annoy a black swan person? Show them someone who is clearly surviving via a whole host of toxic coping mechanisms, giving advice to others on how to live their best life. And I just realized I'm filming this in the middle of the big cicada explosion. I live in the Midwest, so if you guys hear what sounds like the buzzing of electrical wires in the background, that is all the cicadas. Anyway. Also, with the black swan's primarily red beak, we're talking about sharing guidance regarding first chakra issues, as red is the color of the first chakra. This chakra relates to our relative degree of personal security. In a nutshell, do we trust that the universe wants what's best for us, that all challenges are divinely orchestrated with love, and that we have what it takes to not only survive them, but use them as springboards to thrive? Or do we believe that our personal survival is all up to us, and that we might not have the needed skills or knowledge to take care of ourselves, or worse, that the universe actually wants us to suffer? If your first chakra is out of whack because you're continually questioning your ability to survive, it doesn't matter how healthy your other chakras are, you aren't going to be living your healthiest, happiest life. This is why some of the most intuitive people I know are also some of the most egocentric, delusional, and/or destructive. Their higher chakras are working well enough to allow them to access their spiritual gifts, but their base chakra's out of whack, and so they believe that the only way to guarantee their survival is to manipulate others. Black swan people spend a good chunk of their lives exploring their shadows and developing faith in themselves and the universe. They know that all that happens is happening for us and not to us, and they really want others to know this too. It is maddening for them when people refuse to do the work needed to get to this point, particularly when those same people continue to talk and talk and talk about their victimization experiences. So while black swan people are nowhere near as self-critical as white swan folks, they can definitely be judgy of others, which comes from a place of deep frustration and at times desperation. Fortunately, they tend to innately gravitate towards others like themselves, and they eventually tend to find themselves surrounded by like-minded friends. It may take a while. Like all white swan folks, these guys also have to go through a lot of tough experiences, as this is what prompts them to do all that shadow work. But they will find their tribe. What helps here is that unlike all white swans, which tend to be exceptionally territorial year-round, black swans often travel in flocks, and they nest in colonies. This makes them more social. They still crave a soulmate, something fierce, but even if they find that person, they still enjoy having other friends. This also means that they tend to be less demanding of their partner than other swan folks, as they don't require that person to be their one and only source of motivation, support, entertainment, good conversation, and the other things they desire in life. Black swans are often referred to as the impossible bird. The term black swan was first used by the Roman poet Juvenal in his satires around AD 100 to describe something so rare as to be impossible. No one in the Western world had ever seen anything other than a white swan at that point, so it seemed like a safe statement to make. However, when Dutch navigator Willem de Vlaming encountered black swans in Western Australia, he showed the world the hazards of designating something impossible simply because it had never before been observed. Today, we still use the term black swan, and that is to indicate an event that would be nearly impossible to predict because it's so beyond anything we've ever observed before. Black swan people are iconoclasts. They're energized by the experience of challenging other people's cherished beliefs, particularly those related to someone's religious faith and the notions around sin, getting them to open their minds to other possibilities. They tend not to be able to help themselves. It's really just automatic for them. In its highest form, this really just means being their unique and often outlandish selves and leading by example. If someone sees you enjoying a great deal of happiness while breaking every single rule, sooner or later they should begin questioning the truth of those rules. 2, like all white swan people, black swan people are exceptionally creative, and their creativity tends to showcase themes that challenge others to delve into their personal shadows and see the beauty and potential for personal growth waiting to be revealed there. In its less mature manifestation, black swan people can sometimes be cruel, attacking the beliefs of those who are not ready to look at other possibilities and who would be hurt by the destruction of their personal framework of existence, not elevated by it. This is usually the result of the black swan persons having become jaded as a result of running into too many people who just refuse to question what they've been taught and who remain stuck and unhappy as a result. They need to remember that people only really become ready to face their fears and limitations on their schedule, not ours. And so if they really want to help others heal, their best bet is to simply keep being themselves in the most natural way possible, to confront hypocrisy not to hurt or demoralize others, but because it's the right thing to do at the time, and to speak comfortably about the taboo, not to shock, but because what is considered taboo is not a result of divine judgment, but human perception. If they can be themselves for themselves, not to try to change others, they'll do a lot of genuine good. The whole idea of a black swan being an impossible creature also gives black swan people a little extra oomph in the accomplishment of the impossible department. These folks often seem to just work genuine magic in their lives, summoning up opportunities and experiences that cannot be explained by the mundane, logic-bound masses, except as extraordinary strokes of good luck. What's really happening here is that because they're programmed to be more open to the miraculous than the rest of us, they're more apt at manifesting the precise experiences that they desire. Of all the things that stand in the way of our creating what we want, the simple belief that it's impossible that we could receive it is actually one of the biggest. So on to black-necked swan. Like the black swans, black-necked swan differs from all white swans in its companionable nature. It's social with other swans and often found in large flocks, except during the mating season, when it also becomes fiercely territorial. As with black swans, this reduces the extreme need for a soulmate. They still want one, but they do enjoy other friends, and so they don't require their soulmate to meet all of their interpersonal needs. This makes them considerably less demanding spouses. The most obvious way in which black-necked swans differ from all white swans is that the rest of their bodies are white and their necks are black. In the video on Swan as a Totem, I talk about how the throat is the channel through which our feelings must travel before they can be consciously accepted and released, and how it is also the passage through which creativity moves and is eventually expressed. And here, in black-necked swan folks, this channel has a completely different energy from the rest of them. What this translates to is that quite often, black-necked swan people feel and express things that surprise or confuse them. They have an awareness of what dwells in shadow, those things that we don't wish to see because they frighten or shame us. But it is very often not a conscious awareness. Given the large red knobs on their beak, not a full red beak like black swan, but still a prominent show of first chakra energies, black-necked swans are also called to develop a special understanding of their guaranteed personal security a la trust in the universe. And therefore, much of what they share with the world has to do with divine oneness, with plumbing one's shadow for the reasons that one fears and then confronting those fears so that one can move through life in peace and faith and joy. But again, they may not understand how they know these things or why they are driven to express them. It's just something that happens as their energies move from their hearts to their mouths. If ever a creature could be said to be an unconscious channel for the divine, it would be a black-necked swan. This is not an easy thing to deal with. I have a lot of experience with this myself due to some particular aspects in my astrological chart, which result in my sometimes knowing things without having any idea how I know them, or even any real understanding of what they mean. It also means that I will often do or say something that feels right, only to watch the whole situation appear to go wrong, and later to observe that actually that wrong was exactly what needed to happen to help everyone involved. This is a chronic challenge for someone with Libra rising who really wants to be liked, darn it, and doesn't want to rock the boat. This pattern spills over into the black-necked swan person's creative processes as well. They may start out with the intention of creating something light and warm and sunny and classically beautiful, only to have a beautiful darkness fill the page instead and baffle them. If you're a black-necked swan person, you're going to need to do a lot of feeling to make your peace with this, because being this kind of channel is simply inherent to who you are. The only thing you can do is feel the heck out of the experience until either clarity comes or you end up knowing that clarity is not needed and you're just supposed to keep doing what you're doing. I know it's nebulous, but it's what we've got to work with. And while it never feels entirely comfortable, at least it hasn't for me yet, it does get to be a familiar discomfort that you can just face and release, knowing it's not the emergency that it feels like. Otherwise, you'll continuously censor and second-guess yourself, and this is the path to crazy town. I have a set of mantras that I write every day to help me stay on track with those things furthest outside my comfort zone. And part of one of them is, I speak what feels true without insecurity or inhibition, and all is well. This was born out of all the censorship I continuously did, because I was endlessly shocked or upset about what I said when I was relaxed and in a good feeling space. I wanted people to like me, to see what a loving person I am, so I constantly stopped my words at the gate and changed them, only to find that I couldn't seem to build any authentic friendships. No surprise, as I wasn't authentically being me, and that I later end up wishing that I'd said what I had initially felt compelled to say. It would have been the exact right thing in that circumstance. Another significant feature of the black-necked swan is its legs, which are set far back on the body. This makes them excellent swimmers, but it makes it markedly difficult for them to walk on land and a big challenge to take off for flight. Once they're in the air, they are strong flyers, able to attain speeds of 50 miles an hour. So here we have a critter that excels in water, the arena of emotion, creativity, imagination, dreams, intuition, and healing, and in air, the arena of thought and communication, but not at all on land, the arena of groundedness, practicality, and stability. As a result, black swan people are exceptionally creative, deep feelers, intuitive, and often possess natural healing gifts. They're also fiercely analytical, always asking why, particularly of themselves, and are prone to analysis paralysis. However, fortunately, one of their finest qualities is their persistence. It takes black-necked swans a lot of effort to get themselves off the ground. They have to want it. But again, they can fly, and when they do, they soar. When a black-necked swan person really wants something, it can take a while for them to get it because they're not particularly practical, but they also have trouble trusting the entirely impractical voice inside of them that's actually giving them good guidance. So they get stuck in between, constantly ruminating what they should do to get what they want, but not honoring their higher selves. This is where that persistence comes in. If they keep at it, they'll finally take a chance on that mysterious voice within and get themselves off the ground at last, often startling others with the suddenness of liftoff. They're also fabulous communicators. Again, these people make good channelers when they don't question themselves. They simply speak what's moving through them and others just understand. But are they grounded? Nope. At least not without a lot of regular emotional work to help them relax and stop trying to analyze everything or make it make sense. And even when they are closer to being grounded, they often won't look like it. These folks change mental and emotional direction on a dime and can do or say things that are at complete odds with each other with equivalent confidence. It's really important for them to connect with a group of others who get them, who are just as weird and wonderful and dreamy and yet still analytical, as together they can remind each other that they are precisely who they are meant to be and that consistency and practicality are sometimes overrated. Since we are talking about swans here, and all swan folks are looking for that soulmate, this is something that their romantic partner should be able to do for them as well. They need a person who accepts them as the quirky, sometimes mystified person that they are and will not try to change them, but will instead provide for them the source of grounding and stability that they themselves are missing. So I hope this has given you guys a good understanding of black swan and black-necked swans as totems. Again, I can't thank you all enough for your support, as this work really is my passion, and your generosity is what's allowing me to do considerably more of it. You guys are the absolute best, and I wish you all the same joy that you've gifted me. Have a very happy day, members. Cheers!